As we know, of course, on the 2nd of January this year, something devastating happened. Our Houses of Parliament, or a part of our national parliament, was burnt asunder. And as a result, it means that the finance minister will be giving his speech in a different hall in the parliamentary precinct, and of course we are anticipating a lot from him around what he's going to do with the extra revenue windfall that the fiscus has got. It's expected to exceed 150 billion rand, could be as high as 200 billion rand, but of course we do have that small matter of a high level of debt that needs to be attended to. We've got a situation of high unemployment, officially at around 35%, 46.4% if you take into account those people who are described as discouraged workers. So we have a really critical situation, never mind the fact that we have the scourges of both inequality and poverty on top. So of course, the government, constitutionally speaking, has to ensure the well-being of citizens in the country. How are they going to get that balance right? And of course, one of the many stakeholders that will be affected by this is Labour. And I am joined again by Riefdah Ajam, the General Secretary of FEDUSA. Thank you very much for continuing to stay with us, Riefdah. Now, earlier we were speaking, but now I want to ask you, of course, one of the things that you wrote in a document recently is that you're keen for the creation of jobs. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We all want the creation of jobs. But do you agree with the statement that President Ramaphosa made in the State of the Nation that it is not government that creates the jobs, but indeed the private sector? And what would your comment around this be?
Well, it would be a combination of both. We know that government employs a large amount of public servants, but at the same time we believe that the private sector holds the catalyst to driving this particular process. Not only just big businesses, but SMMEs that are in actual fact the heartbeat of this economy, that have immensely contributed towards our GDP. And through that process, we know that ultimately the redesign of the loan guarantee scheme is one of those elements that we look towards to be able to allow those SMMEs to recover, to find their feet, to be resuscitated in the process, because ultimately the 200 billion that was allocated in terms of that stimulus package, there hasn't been sufficient uptake. It is appalling that we are seeing that approximately 19 billion out of 200 billion has been released in terms of funding. So how true are we in terms of the uptake? How true are we in terms of our commitment to making them succeed? Because through these initiatives, we will allow them to be prosperous once again. But that regulatory framework that governs conditionalities as well is just too rigid. And the announcement that the President has made to review that process is something that we remain hopeful for.
Yeah. And of course, the President did actually allude to the fact that the Finance Minister should be speaking to the details around that loan guarantee scheme. Hopefully we hear from him around that today. And then just on that thorny issue of the public sector wage, economists always say that's one of the main risks to the fiscal trajectory. And we know that public sector workers continue to be in a bit of a war with government around that 2018 public sector wage agreement, which was reneged on by the government. So we know that the Constitutional Court has yet to make a ruling on whether indeed the government can get away with not paying what it was supposed to pay in 2018. Do you think that there can be a meeting of minds between the public sector and the government on this issue, given the fact that, we are all in this together, and that if you sink the government finances too deep, it's going to have consequences not just for public sector workers, but for all of us?
Oh, indeed. You've just touched the nail on the head now, Nompu. There's definitely room for engagement. And when there is meaningful engagement to find not only tangible but lasting solutions, that is the essence of democracy that we're looking towards. And that is the essence of collective bargaining that we hold so true, and that we will safeguard with every essence of our being, the spirit of trade unionism, because ultimately we have seen a gradual erosion of that process. And we do not want a precedent to be set. So we are looking towards the upcoming Public Sector Summit that is scheduled for March 2022, so that we are able to engage meaningfully, truthfully, and constructively, because there are many elements in that narrative that has been fueled by many elements of society that is largely not truthful. So we want to dispel those myths, and we want to unpack the process, number one, not only about the audit that we have been calling for as FEDUSA of the public sector, to determine where that bloatedness in essence resides, what happened in the 2018 MTBPS, and ultimately all those ghost employees in the system. Those are some of the elements that we look towards, and ultimately as we drive that process of professionalization, it must be a process of meritocracy, because we believe that a capable and a competent state underpins many of these elements. So we should dispel this notion that the public service is bloated, because that skilled competence resides there, and it is something that we should be safeguarding.
Riefdah, thank you so much for your insights there and your comments. That was Riefdah Ajam, as she's the General Secretary of FEDUSA, giving her points on the various issues that we've discussed.